morning, everyone, and happy International Women's Day. First of all, I'd like to extend my very warm welcome to a very good friend of mine and our special guest today, Olamide Adeosun, who is the Chief Financial Officer of Quest Merchant Bank. And to my colleagues, Odiri Ogine and Oladele, who will be joining us as panelists in the discussion today. I'm very pleased to see every single woman on this call today, and I'm excited because they're celebrating us, women, today. Today is a day that we celebrate the progress and achievements of women globally, especially in Nigeria. We have the likes of Margaret Ekpo, who was the first female political activist. We have Florence Wakpa, the first female writer in Nigeria, and also the first female novelist to be recognized internationally on work in English language. We have the likes of Elizabeth Awoliyi, the first female medical doctor in Nigeria, and the first female pilot, and the first female to fly a commercial pilot plane in the nation, Captain Chinyere, I'll struggle with the surname, Oyena Chewa. And we have a few more women, which I'm not going to be emphasizing today. But really, today is a special day that reminds us that we continue to raise awareness against gender bias and take action for equality. We also use today's theme, which talks about break the and focus on the issues that women have around work-life balance and how work-life balance has actually been an issue that may be creating the bias we have. I believe the topic of our conversation today, work-life balance, myth or reality, is apt for the discussion as we focus on the bias in the workplace. Our speakers will use this opportunity to unpack the role that this gender bias plays in the workplace and how it affects women over their careers, and how over the years the responsibility of the woman seems to exceed that of the man, despite them having the same engagement level in the workplace. You notice that women still have to go home and still have to cater for their family, and all this bias feed into what the community thinks of what a role of a woman should be. In the past, the men dominated the economy by being the main provider. But over the years, you've actually seen that role, we being the provider and also the one nurturing and caring within the households being played by women. And this, of course, has continued to be a challenge and a conflict within our society. So today I'm going to leave my colleagues to have this conversation around this bias and really express themselves and open up to us on how we need to move forward and how we're going to be engaging. So please sit back and enjoy the session. But before I round up, I also want to use this to invite every single one of us, since we are women having this conversation, to pay attention to our upcoming quarterly leadership series. It was a deliberate strategy for us as a society to put Kala Harris, the Vice Chairman and Managing Director of Morgan Stanley, on the platform to be talking to us on the 16th of March, because it's Women's Month as far as I'm concerned, and it's a special month for us. She is the first female speaker on our platform, and which really coincides with the International Women's Month as we celebrate ourselves. So please register, and if you know her, you know she's full of life. And if you haven't heard of her, I'd advise you register and please come on the 16th of March to join our platform. But once again, let me wish every single one of us happy International Women's Day. And thanks so much to the Diversity Committee led by Rita for organizing this event. I'll now hand over back to Rita as we start the session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ibukun. And again, welcome everyone. So I'm going to be moderating this session today. And I know Ibukun has already mentioned, Lamide, but I just want to do a quick intro again, or quick background on our speakers. We have three esteemed panelists today. The first is Lamide Adeosun, the Group Chief Financial Officer at Quest. We also have Oladele Ola is the Senior Vice President at Parthian Partners Limited, and she's also the founder of the Moneyway Club. And then we have Odiri Ogini. Odiri is the Managing Director at United Capital Asset Management. Odiri is also the chair of our Employer Relations Committee here at the CFA Society Nigeria. Now, as these ladies speak, we're going to hear about different choices, different career paths, and just different anecdotes. And hopefully one or more of them will resonate with you throughout the conversation. But we're also going to be asking our panelists very common questions that professional women ask. And some of you have already sent in your questions in advance. Thank you very much for that. We'll try as much as possible to weave those questions into our discussions. But if any one of you has any ad hoc questions, please feel free to put it into the chat box. We'll try as much as we can to accommodate that. And then we hope to have a Q&A session at the end where we can answer more questions. We also want some feedback from you. So we're going to be pushing out one or two questions, just pulling questions, just to get a sense of, where we stand on a few issues. And finally, I hope that, we can, every one of us, or most of us, all of us really, can glean one or more tips on how to be successful in work and life, and ultimately, dispel this gender bias and the bias around work-life balance. So my dear speakers, welcome. Welcome, Lamide, welcome, Ola, and welcome, Odiri. I'm going to start by asking every one of you the same question, starting from Ola. Today as it is, post-pandemic, right now, do you believe that work-life balance is a myth or a reality, and why? Tell us a bit about what work-life balance means to you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you to the CFA Society Nigeria for this invitation. I'm really happy to be here. So I'll go right to your question. Is work-life balance a myth or a reality? To me, work-life balance is a reality. But what I would say is that it is so unique to each individual what work-life balance is. And even in an individual, what work-life balance means changes over time. So when you are young, without being married or before getting married, and then when you get married, and then when you have kids, what that means at different stages of life changes, right? So when people say work-life balance is a myth, it's a myth when you are looking at what the other person is doing and trying to reproduce it. But if you look inwards and find your own internal balance, then it is a reality.
Okay, great. Odiri, thank you. Thank you, Ola.
All right, thank you very much, Rita, for having me. Before I answer the question, I just want to play an analogy that I play around in my head when it comes to work-life balance. So for me, it's like juggling two balls, two very big and hard balls. And the goal is that those balls should not fall to the ground. So when you're juggling balls, they're never on the same level. At any given time, one is always higher than the other one. So that's the way I look at work-life balance. Now, if I expect that those two balls should be on the same level at any given point in time, then that's a myth. But if my expectation is that one ball will always be up while the other one is down, at every given point in time, I'm juggling, one is up, one is down, or depending on the priority, depending on the circumstances at that particular point in time, then that for me is a reality. So that's the way I see work-life balance. At no given point in time, are you going to have equilibrium? So if you're looking out for equilibrium, then to a large extent, that's a myth. But if you have the understanding that you're juggling these two balls, the goal is none of them should fall to the ground because it will crack. But at any given point in time, depending on my circumstances, depending on the priority for that particular time, one will always be up, and the other one will be down or below that, then that will always be a reality.
Okay, thank you, Odiri. Lamide.
I'd just like to start to say thank you to the CFA Society of Nigeria for inviting me to be part of this very topical issue and to be sitting in the midst of so many chartered financial analysts. I feel almost choked, but that aside, work-life balance. I think Ola and Odiri have said it all. It's, it means different things to different people, and it's also situational. It depends on circumstances, etc. I think what I've heard recently when people talk about life-work balance, you know, people have actually turned it on its head and no longer talk about work-life balance because they believe that, you know, life should actually come first and then work, you know, so you should not have to, you know, live near the office. You know, your kids don't have to, you know, go to school near your office. So people are now coining it life-work balance. I think just to, my last point on this is what Oprah Winfrey said. I think she coined it that you can have everything you want, not just at the same time. So you can have this life-work balance, work-life balance, but it's just, you know, not all at the same time. There will be time, as Ojebi said, when, you know, one of the balls is higher than the other, or when you've got children and you have to, you know, work longer hours when you're single, or, you know, vice versa. So life-work balance is a reality. Thank you.
Thank you, Lamide. Thank you, speakers. Let me move to Ola. You've talked about. I think one thing that's clear that we've all agreed on here, or three of you have mentioned, is that it's situational. It depends on where you are, and it's different for people at different stages of their lives. But I want to, if you can talk to me a bit about passion. You know, some people say that it's all about finding passion and purpose. You know, that's sort of like some kind of a panacea to attaining work-life balance. You know, what do you say to that? And I'm asking you because I know that you are also a senior in paid employment, but you do so many things outside of work. Is that the case? And what does passion have to do with, you know, finding that balance, if at all?
My response to that is a little, I sort of disagree, or 50% agree. That's whichever way we choose to look at it. But I say that because sometimes people follow passion to a point where it crosses the point of reason. And I realize that sometimes finding passion is about doing things, as against sitting down and saying, I know my passion, and then waiting until you figure it out before you take action. So the mindset that I have around figuring out work-life balance and its entirety is sitting down to write down what is important to you. What are the things that are important to you? Is family important? Is hanging out every Friday important? What is important to you? Hanging out with your friends, your children, in the order that is important to you, and understanding what needs to be done to achieve those things. Now, when you put that in context, when you decide on that context, then your actions should align with it. So when people say passion, I can have a passion for reading or for swimming, but if I'm not going to competitive sports to fund my lifestyle, then that passion is sort of dead on arrival, or that passion becomes more of a problem than a solution. So what am I saying? In the journey of finding that work-life balance, passion is good, but taking action, the things that you're doing every day, and being intentional about what you put your energy into is sort of more important to me. And then being open to making changes, right? If it's not working, you try the next thing. But then if you just sit down with, oh, I'm passionate about it and I'm sticking with it, you might get into a rut that would be very difficult for you to get out of.
Thank you, Ola. That's a good one. Thank you for that. I want to go to Odiri. I'm saying this because, you know, your answers about work-life balance, you talked about jogging the ball. And my question is, and Lamide also alluded to it, as in, you know, life-work balance. My question is the problem the fact that we don't accept work as a necessary part of our lives? You know, so is it a mindset thing? And if that is it, how do we, you know, integrate work with life? Or how do we integrate life into work? So work with life, yeah. Is it a mindset thing? Is it something we have to, there's always this discussion is always going on, work-life balance. Is the problem the fact that we dissociate work from life? Talk to me about that. What are your thoughts on that?
All right, thank you, Rita, for that question. So I think there's a concept now beyond work-life balance, which is more of work-life integration. You know, so it's no longer a case of trying to balance your work and your life, because your work and your life is supposed to be one, you know, and integrated. So I will look at it from a point of view of not looking at your work as separate from who you are. And for you to do that, you have to love your work. You have to love the work that you do. If you don't love the work that you do, it looks more like something that is external to you. But if you love the work that you do, irrespective of the number of hours that you have to put into that work, you are passionate about it. You talked about passion. You enjoy the work that you do. Even when things are not going well, but you are interested. You just want to just put in your all. I recall sharing an instance with somebody when we were talking about this issue of work-life balance. I said I had a 7-month-old baby, and I remember a particular day I had to leave work at 1:30 a.m. Because the next day was a board meeting and we needed to close out on the audited account, because that account had to be presented at the board meeting, but I knew I had a 7-month-old baby at home. I could easily have told my boss, see, I need to go home now. I have a baby at home, this, and just give that as an excuse. But I also realized that, see, this is also a very high priority work. I'm key to making this thing done, and ensuring that we're able to meet our deliverables for the next day. If I go home and then, things fall out, so what kind of excuse am I going to give? Well, for me, I think because I love the work that I'm doing, because I love my job, and I know that it's also important for me, to, at the end of the day, to be able to meet a particular deliverable. So it wasn't for me letting go of my family or leaving my 7-month-old baby, unattended to. I had to make a different priority and arrangement to say, call on my support system, my husband, my nanny, okay, all these things are done. I can't get home on time. Please, can you help me ensure that she's fine until I get home? So I think for the most important thing when it comes to work-life balance or work-life integration is loving the work that you do and enjoying it and finding fulfillment in it. But the truth is that it's not every part of your work that you will enjoy. It's not every part of your work that you will love to do. So what I do is I tend to find what is it about my work or about this role or assignment that I really love. I tend to deal with annoying bosses sometimes, annoying colleagues. I don't like that, but I have to still do the work. So I tend to find what is it about this work, that I really love. For my current role now, I love the fact that, it's challenging. I love the fact that sometimes at midnight, I'm up awake thinking, how do I meet my budget? How do I deliver? That's for me, it's challenging and it's exciting. So I love that. I also love the fact that I have control. I hate being told what to do. I'm not the kind of person that you will write down, writing a paper and say, no. So if I don't find those two things in the work or the assignment or role that I'm giving, I will be bored irrespective of the number of hours I'm spending, irrespective of the fact that, I'm not under pressure. So it's important for us to be able to love the work that we do. When we do that, you're able to integrate your core essence. It aligns with your values, it aligns with your personality, and then you find fulfillment in it. So I think when you find fulfillment in the work that you do, there's that integration. Thank you. Okay.
Thanks. Those are good points, Odiri. Lamide, let me come over to you. Is it a work-life balance issue or is it a workload issue? Do you think, if you look back many years back, when just take, let's take education and people who were teachers 20 years ago or 30 years ago, and, schools closed at 2:30, 1:32. But now at 3:30, schools are still open. People are still doing a lot more. So is it really a work-life balance issue, or it's just that we're just taking on so much work?
I don't think it's a workload issue because, things were hard then. If you speak to our parents, they will tell you that things were hard then. If you speak to us now, we'll tell you things are hard now. And if you speak to the Gen Zs, they'll tell you things are hard. So it is not a workload issue. It's just finding that balance. I think, Jerry have said it, Ola has said it. It's about, what are your priorities? You understand what are the values that are, that you hold dear to you. And, as we said, when you initially asked us the question about what does work-life balance mean to us, it's about it's circumstantial, it's based on circumstances, situational, time of life that you are. So it's not about the workload. I think for me, what I would say is that, at different phases of your life, expectations are different. I look at myself when I was a student. All my parents told me to do was just to study, and I felt, oh my God, this is too much. It's overwhelming. I have no life. But that was then. And then I had young children. I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to cope with this? And I still had work, and I still had to manage life. And I look at myself now, and I still have the same issues, to the extent that, yes, there's not exactly the same, but in terms of context, they're the same. Having to always find that balance between workload and also having a life. So it's about how you prioritize your time. It's about really seeking out what are your values, and then working towards those things, as opposed to thinking that, the workload today is more than what it was yesterday, or the workload tomorrow will be more than what it is today, or the fact that you want to be out there partying, well, you're stuck inside studying or working. So for me, it's about just focusing on what are your priorities and also what are your values, and then just creating your life and your work around those two virtues. Thank you.
Excellent. Odu, do you want to weigh in on that?
Okay, so she has said it right. It's not really about workload, because you can be still work in a paid employment, and you have the workload, and you're complaining, oh no, if I go and start up my business, I won't have this same workload. Because there are people who run their own business, who close very late, who work weekend. So it's really not about workload. I will still come back to the fact that you have to love the work that you do. If you love the work that you do, irrespective of the workload, you are passionate about it, you're excited about it, you want to do it, you want to wake up in the morning or go to bed late at night just because you're passionate about your work and you love your work. So I think these days it's really not about workload. The people who complain about workload are definitely people who feel there's no alignment between the work that they do, and their own personal style. But once there's that alignment, irrespective of the amount of work that is involved, I think you will enjoy doing it. And also, to a large extent, the work that we do, it fulfills us. There's that fulfillment, when you do a good work or when you do something, there's that balance within yourself. Oh, I'm successful because I'm able to achieve this, I'm fulfilled because I'm able to do it, whether you're working in a paid employment or you're running your own business. So I think to a large extent, it's not really about the workload, but it's about the fact that we're not passionate or we're not excited or we don't love the work that we do.
Okay. I'm glad that both of you to speak on that, because now I want to take a poll. So we're going to take a poll. We're going to ask a question. And I think if that question can go out now, I'd like everyone here to just answer. It's a yes or no question. And it's really about this workload issue. So let's see what everyone thinks about that. So the question is, the general problem of overwork that prevails in contemporary corporate culture is really what holds of work-life balance. Do you agree? Are we done? Okay, let's share the results. Okay. Okay, so 56% of us agree with the fact that it's a workload issue, and 44% of us believe that it's not a workload issue. So I mean, off that, if it's a workload issue, if a lot of us think it's a workload issue, what is the role? And Lamide, I'm going to put this to you, and maybe Ola, what is the role of our institutions? And, what is the role of the individual? I guess the role of individual, we've talked so much about, finding your passion, knowing what works for you. What is the role of the institution, and where does the buck, stop?
Okay. So the reality is that it depends on the organization you're working for. And then within the organization, it depends on the team that you are working in, and even the lead of that team. So there are so many factors that come to play in your personal experience around workload. There are some leaders that do not give you the information on time so you can plan yourself. And depending on the stage of your career, you are at the mercy of that person in having to deliver on things. So the role of institutions is to sort of standardize how staff and the workforce is managed. Right, I think it's a responsibility of HR to be able to say, let's have timelines, let's have SLAs for delivery, let's have, if something comes to you, the minimum. So we know when you have consultants in your office and consultant says, I'm going to do this thing in 1 month, and you're saying, oh, I need it in 2 weeks, but they'll say, given our workload, we normally give 1 month for this, right? So that we can get the job done effectively. So maybe if it's actually a 6-week project, the organization is responsible for saying it is actually a 6-week project as against a 1-month project. And when we have that culture and we know that, okay, the number of hours required to get this done is 10 hours, you can't tell me to start a project at 4 o'clock and say deliver before close of business when you know it will take 10 hours. So that's the part of organizations. But for the individual, understand that when there is work, there is work. So beyond the fact that, okay, organizations might not give you the timeline, right? There's a part of putting yourself in it. Think of if you were running your own business, and I totally love what, was it Odiri or Olamide said around when you are running your business, you run late hours, right? If you were running your business and a client came and told you that I'm going to pay you 50 million to get this done in 2 days, you will sleep. It's the same way the boss is taking on that transaction because we need to meet a target, right? And so it boils down to maybe, are you aligned? Are you happy with where you are working? Is this something you want to do? And if it is, then take on the adrenaline rush and then make sure it's not too consistent. Meaning that we're not jumping from one rush event to another. But if it comes once in a while, then take it on as a challenge. So it's a middle ground. And then at some point you have to look and say, if this is a culture of your organization where there's always fire brigade, then maybe after getting some experience, I should move to somewhere that has a better culture that aligns with me. But at least at that point, do what needs to be done. So it's sort of, there's no right or wrong answer. You have to balance it out.
Lamide, you want to weigh in on this?
Yes, in addition to everything Ola has said, definitely the organization and the individual do have, dual roles to play in terms of bringing, work-life balance into fruition. The reality is that organizations are changing. What COVID has taught us, particularly here in Nigeria, is that you can actually work from home and still be productive. Without saying too much about where I work, we're still, we're operating a hybrid model, and productivity, it's as its peak. For the organization, it's a case of understanding where the world is. What do people want these days? People want flexible working. They want to be able to take their children to school, pick them up at school, go for PTAs, go for sports days, go to the clinic, go to the bank, which are things that happen during the workday. And at the same time, they don't want to lose their job. So it's for organizations to be able to weave all of this, need of the employees, into the work culture, into the work, the working model policy, so that they get the best out of these employees. An employee that has kids or has, pets or whatever it is, that or aged parents, and then needs time off, does not have to be penalized, for taking time off. What we tend to see these days that employers are doing from an institutional perspective is we now see different types of leaves. We have, bereavement leave, study leave, vacation leave, parenting leave, children's leave, maternity leave, paternity leave. And these are things that institutions are actually now doing to ensure that, you don't have to use your annual leave for all of these things. They actually have created, leave days for all of these different situations that individuals go through to just bring in this additional, work-life balance into it. And I like something that Ola said, from an individual perspective, for the organization to still remain existing, we all need to start thinking as entrepreneurs. You understand? If the work needs to be done, it needs to be done. If the organization is giving and you're taking and you're not giving anything, back in return, then it becomes a seesaw, an imbalanced relationship. So for me, the individual also needs to be aligned to the goals of the organization, needs to give of themselves. At the end of the day, they are being paid to do the job. It's, they're not doing it out of personal sacrifice. So it's for both ways. Is for both the institution and the individual. It's a case of it should be a win-win situation. And as the last thing I want to talk about is what Ola said is, if the organization is not working for you, then leave. Don't feel cheated. Don't say the organization is bad. Don't make the organization want to change because of you if you don't have the power to create that change. Leave and go to an organization that's best suited to you. So it's a give and take. Both parties have a part to play. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Ola. Thanks, Lamide, for that insight. Lamide, I like what you said about thinking, having the entrepreneurial mindset and giving of yourself. I know that even as in our personal lives, we also have staff that we wish would give of themselves to the job at hand. Or do you? Just piggybacking off what Lamide has mentioned, in your space, is Odiri still here? Yes.
She's connected. She's trying to join again.
Okay, we'll wait for her then. Okay, Ola, let me get back. Let's talk to Ola again. Ola, one of the things Odiri mentioned, when she was talking about, she had a 7-month-old baby at home and they had something they had to close, was that she mentioned a support system. Now, there are different types of support systems, and some of them I hear people saying, to have some of the support systems, they need to have money. They need to be okay financially. So, what's the link, with finances and, having a support system or work-life balance? And what are your thoughts? What can people do in that regard to be more financially balanced, really? Or do you think that there's no link, or what are your thoughts around that?
Definitely, there's a link. What are you working for? Like, really, if your father was the richest man in the world, work-life balance is not really a concern. If you're not enjoying your job, you drop off and you go home and you send your boss a text that I'm done. Yeah, but the reason why we are working, apart from sense of fulfillment, is because we need to get money. We need to earn a living, right? But I find that a lot of people unintentionally self-sabotage when it comes to money, especially women. Simple scenario, you start off work, when you start work, you start eating maybe at the booker, you send in cleaner, and then you become a full staff, you're confirmed. The next thing, you move to TFC. A few years down the line, you move to North Bayalara, and you don't realize that, yes, it's good, it's cool, it's socially acceptable, and there's that social capital part, right? But sometimes that plays into our dressing, it plays into where we live, it plays into the cars we drive, it plays into so many things that might actually be eroding capital that, if saved up and invested, would actually give you the confidence to actually say that, okay, this job is draining my life. Let me take 2 months off. I am skilled, but I can't breathe. I have networks, but I can't take advantage of anything. I don't have time to even update my LinkedIn because I'm so into this job. So what do you need? You need finances. You can't just drop off, right? So, but then people don't realize that there's actually capital. There could be. Of course, realities are different, but in your own space, what is capital to you? That's on one side. And in terms of support, sometimes support is not always paid. Sometimes it's about being creative. You have a neighbor, they go to the same school with your child. Why are you both driving in different cars to pick up your children? Why don't you guys work together? Things like that, right? You have someone that is from your village that you could help, but you're like, no, I'm in Lagos, I don't want anybody. The person will live in your house for free. All you have to do is feed them and probably put them in a public school. But no, I want the nanny that is trained and blah, 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 right? Looking at what other people can afford, right? The reality is that, especially when you start having a family, you need support. So be creative within your own space on what support means to you. If it is just someone to clean, if it's someone to stay with your kids, if it's whatever it is, you need to figure out your own scenario and work around it. Don't always think of the direct thing that everybody does that you can't afford and feel like, oh, I'm stuck here because I can't afford it. Try and ask questions, talk to people. Sometimes it's about saying what your problem is, and someone says, oh, this is what works for me and doesn't really cost me money, right? But then the truth is, first of all, we are working for money to a very large extent. I mean, even if you are enjoying your job, you want to be paid, you want to be promoted. So we need to own that, right? And then when you get that money, keep some as capital, keep some as shock absorber. It reduces the pressure, it reduces that sense of I'm in bondage, it reduces that whole, a job is just not working, but I'm stuck with it. It gives you room to be able to say, okay, let me start something to decide I have capital. So yes, financial well-being is very, very important in achieving work-life balance.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ola, for that. Thanks for that. Odiri, we were talking about what organizations are doing. Lamdi was talking a bit about what organizations are doing to actually support work-life balance, and we'd like to hear from you. As a policymaker, what are the things that are going on in your space right now in terms of trying to support creating that balance for your staff?
All right, thank you, Rita, and apologies, my internet just threw me off. So I would say as a senior leader in an organization where you're involved in policy making, I think one of the things we try to do here is to create harmony within the work environment and ensure that it's not just about work, because there's a lot of pressure with work. So we set up something called the Cultural Day, where we can all have fun, and you dress down, eat, drink, laugh, dance, and just to unwind. And then I think one other thing that we do, which is being driven by the HR organization, is the Thank God It's Friday. I know most organizations do it, but we try to do it in such a way that, it's part and parcel of our policy. It's part and parcel of our own culture, where, people take part in even creating the activities of that day. Every member of staff, get involved in creating the activity of that day. So it's, you know yourself, not just about work, but you know yourself outside of work. And then one other thing we've set up is a football session, internal football competition, as well as an external one, where we invite every member of staff to be a part of it. I think for us, it's just a way to bond, and bond some steam outside of work. And then also organizations can also look at, a day where you can bring in your children. I know prior to COVID, it was something that we did once, and I remember bringing my kids, and taking that picture. When I look back, they keep asking questions. Oh, mommy, this particular, is this person your boss? Is the person still in your office? For me, it just gives me a sense that at least they know that if mommy is not at home, their mommy is in this environment, and then they can picture that environment in their mind, So these are things that organizations can do. So the goal is just sometimes you take the people out of the work environment, let them be able to have fun, let them be able to bond, let them be able to know themselves beyond just working together. And I think something that can also be done is maybe having to hold meetings in each other's home, within the comfort of what people are willing to allow. I think that way you bond with not just the staff, you bond with the family, you bond with the kids in their own personal space. I think that goes a long way in endearing people to the organization. I've been in my current organization for about 14 years. And one of the things I ask myself is, why have you stayed this long? I think for me, it's because there's sort of harmony between my own personal goals and lifestyle and that of the organization. So when it gets to a point where that is broken, then I probably will not begin to find my way and say, so it may not necessarily be about the organization not trying to do things, but it also gets to a point where I begin to feel that, there's no longer that harmony. And that harmony is not just in the work, it's also in the culture. It's in how you are accepted, how you flow freely within the organization.
Okay, great. Well, Jay, what about, I know this is key to many people, especially since, COVID struck. What about flexibility? Is that something you're considering? And I want to throw the question out. Do we see that flexibility in terms of, having flexible work hours or even being able to work from home? Do we see that continuing post-COVID? I mean, we're coming out of COVID, but in 12 months without COVID, do we see that taking place in our organizations? And do we think that is something that will actually really help balance?
All right, I think flexibility is good, and I think it's something that if you can say one good thing that came out of COVID, I think is this issue of flexibility. I know a number of organizations have been trying to create that kind of policy, but COVID, I think, accelerated that. So flexibility is one way to ingrain work-life balance. And I think it's good also. But, to a large extent for women, I think we have to be sincere with ourselves. Sometimes it's not easy working from home. The kids are there, there's a lot of distraction and there's a lot of disturbance. But also one of the things I've seen when it comes to flexibility is that the lines between work and your own personal space is now blurred. So you end up saying in the name of flexibility, you're working longer hours. Yes, it's good for the organization, but to a large extent, it's really not good for the individual. That sense of work-life balance is actually lost in the process, which is why if we can manage that concept of flexibility properly, then I think that it's a good one. But if we say flexibility, work from home, and then there's no closing hours, you are still holding meetings at 10 p.m. After all, you're in your house, you won't have to meet traffic to know. So then that defeats the purpose, which is why at the top of my list, I will not probably put flexibility in the sense of the word flexibility. But I think that the concept of flexibility to support work-life balance is a situation where people can work from home, but can still, create that boundaries around their work. But when that boundaries are being blurred or we are losing that boundary, then it's no longer healthy, to say flexibility is supporting the work-life balance.
Lamide and Ola, does any of you want to weigh in or not? What are your thoughts?
Okay, Lamide, go ahead. Lamide,
go ahead. Thank you. Definitely, flexibility is actually very topical, and it's a double-edged sword, as Uju rightly said. It's got its benefits and it's got its cons, to the extent that if you don't set boundaries, I start work at 8, I close at 6 or 7, whatever it is. If you don't set those boundaries, then you tend to work all through the night, and it's just people are calling you at 10, 11, 12. There's just no end to when work, stops. So your kids, you're at home, your kids can see you, but they can't interact with you. So really, is that really flexibility? So that's one part of it. Another, con is the fact that there's the issue of isolation. There's the issue of cultural dilution for the organization, because you can't replace virtual meetings, virtual parties, socials, etc. with in-person. It's just not the same, because it's very difficult, virtually to really perceive, body languages and, and all of those other nuances that you would probably perceive when you're with people in the same room. All that said, I still see flexibility as, for me personally and my team, as a major pro, particularly right now in Lagos, where things are just crazy. Traffic, forced scarcity today, security issues, this and that. And flexibility has allowed us to actually still remain relevant and productive from the comfort of our homes. At FBN Quest, if I can say so, we have really adopted flexibility as a way of working. I tend to come to the office only a couple of days in the week, and so does my colleagues. And we haven't seen any drop, at least from my team perspective, in productivity. And that's because people are still able to do work and still do life, and then still find that balance to ensure that they're productive and their careers are not being stalled. So for me, yes, it's got its cons. It's for me and my team, it's definitely, thank God for COVID in that respect of bringing flexible working into Nigeria. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Lamide. I want to move on and just talk about Lamide, and this is back to you. There's a conception that women, most professionals, only really achieve work-life balance or get better at it when they're at the top. Now, was this the case for you? And speak to us about that. Is it really true? Because I even got a few questions, that it's really for only people at the top because they can manage their schedules better. Talk to us about that.
Big no, it's not true. If you're not structured, from the beginning, when you're an analyst, you're not going to be structured when you're a CEO or, a CFO or whatever it is that, you consider being at the top. These are things, this is structure, productivity, being focused. All of these things are things that you must groom yourself from the beginning, and they only get better as you go to the top. So to say that it gets better at the top is not true. I have always been the queen of delegation. I try to focus only on what I can do. So even when I didn't have money, I was struggling, I would still delegate, as much as I could, the cleaning, the cooking, even looking after my kids, I put my hands up, but don't judge me, that's just me. Because I felt that, my work-life balance can only come into its full self when I'm focused on what only I can do. And that way I get fulfillment, and everybody around me, gets a less cranky Lamide, a happier Lamide, and the kids, it's all good for everybody. To say that it's only at the top it's a fallacy, also to the extent that the responsibilities at the top is different. The responsibility when you're an analyst is different, when you're a middle manager, so at different echelons of your career, different stages of your career, the scope, expectations, responsibility, the amount of information you have to take on, it's all very different. So I just want to emphasize that if you're looking that, okay, by the time I'm at the top, I'll have more money, I can afford this, I'll have 100 people working for me, they can read the documents, you need to start, cultivating that work-life balance, those structures, focus, prioritizing. You start your day with a to-do list. For instance, for me, before I go to bed every night, I open my calendar and I look at what do I have tomorrow. And then on Sunday, I look at my whole week to see what is my week going to look like. But every night I say, what is tomorrow going to be like? So that way, mentally, I'm also getting myself prepared, in terms of prioritizing, structuring my day so that I'm the best of Lamide comes to the office tomorrow. So it's not true. It doesn't get better at the top. Start now. Start prioritizing now. Thank you.
Fantastic. Thanks, Leslie. Thanks for that. That's really good. Ola, we all agree that there's a lot more work now. So given the rigors of work, how do you advise that women prioritize their well-being?
It's like Lamide said, it's something that you need to figure out what you can do and what you can't. What we are all trying to find is time. That's the reality. We are all trying to find time. Everything that needs to be done has to be put in time, right? So if you can outsource. Like she said, hands up. What she knows I can comfortably outsource, let me give it to someone else. Why not? Right? So I would say that whole thing about listing out all you need to do, all that needs to be achieved, the ones that someone else can get done for you. Please, as much as possible, let the person do it and start wherever you are, whatever that means at that level. Because you almost do not want to become CEO and then be looking for the PA at that time, because there's a trust issue. There are conversations around it that you need to have built that relationship over time, right? So you carry the person along with you to where you are going. And that's like the mindset, right? So what am I saying? Find as much time, create time for yourself, put yourself as a priority, and find what you can exchange. So if, for example, things like you spend 2 hours in traffic, maybe getting a driver, you can say getting a driver, yes, you might pay fully for a driver, or you might find a driver at work that closes at the same time with you and lives in the same direction, and you just top up his pay a little. So you're not paying what every other person is paying, but you have 1 hour, 30 minutes, 2 hours to read a book to build yourself up. That's the kind of creativity and intentionality that you need to bring to your life, because like you said, we can't escape work. we can't escape pressure. We agree that our parents said it was stressful, and we're looking at them and saying, you were getting home by 4, what was stressful, right? And there's a high chance that our kids will look at us and say, what was stressful in your life at that time? So there's that sense of the way life is right now. And I strongly believe that we are built for a time like this. If you're on this earth at this time, you are sort of equipped to live the life that you need to live. So be intentional and be true to yourself, because what you are looking for is time. So anything that is not as important or that is lower down the list, as much as possible, outsource.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ola. So it's all about still prioritizing and making the most of your time. Great. Ojiri, coming back to you, and just as an offshoot of what Lamide talked about, work-life balance not getting easier at the top. One of the issues that a lot of people talk about is that even at lower levels, they don't get that flexibility they want. And it could be simple things like, I need to attend something at my son's school, an event, and that flexibility. So a lot of people feel that flexibility is actually offered to people who really don't already have the flexibility, meaning the people at the top. What are your thoughts about that? How should anyone who wants some of those flexibilities, what would you advise them to do? You want to be able to, I went to, and this is just, I was at an embassy once, and I met a young lady, and she was so frantic because she didn't want to put on she didn't want to take calls, and she was so frantic. And I was like, what is the problem? And she's like, I'm here at the embassy, and my boss and everybody, they've been calling me. And my question was, why didn't you just tell them you're going to the embassy? And just tell them you're going to be in the office late. And she's like, they can't do that. She couldn't do that. So what would you advise people like that who feel that, look, it's difficult for me to get some of those accommodations?
Wow, interesting. While you were speaking, I just remembered, growing up in my career, I had an NPR meeting, and I needed to attend a school event. And I didn't know how to tell my boss, that this meeting is clashing with a very important personal program with my child, and I will not be able to attend the meeting. So I could relate with the story that you shared. And to a large extent, I would say that you get to a certain point in your career that you have that flexibility. And you have that flexibility because of you can control the schedule. So if I have an embassy meeting tomorrow, I will not put a meeting tomorrow. But that's going to be different from an analyst or a younger colleague who does not control the schedule of that meeting time or does not have the ability to schedule that meeting. So to that extent, as you grow much older in your career, once you can control the timing, the schedule, it's easier for you to be able to manage that. But I think that what is most important also is to be so good at what you do. If you are good at what you do, and you come to me to say, oh, I need to take my child to school tomorrow, or I need to do this, or I have a family engagement, I will allow you to go. But the truth is that if you're a slacker, PSF will not even allow you to come and ask me, So you'll be reluctant, to even come to ask your boss or whoever it is, to take that time off, because you have also not delivered. You have also not proven that you are capable, you can take on more responsibility. But once you get to that point where your boss knows that, see, you can always trust me to deliver on my work, whether I'm in or I'm out, then you should be able to trust that, see, when you come to me to ask for exceptional, I won't be available, or, I will grant that. So the truth is, to a large extent, as you grow much older in your career, you can control the schedule and timing, and so that gives you flexibility. But as a young person coming up in your climbing up the career ladder, the truth is you need to let your work, be what will speak for you in a time where you really need that flexibility. And trust me, we are all human. We all came through that funnel. We have all experienced whatever it is you're experiencing, and so we will always bring that human feeling to bear when you come to us to say, see, I need to be able to do this. But the truth is your work is what would be the differentiating factor to whether somebody will allow you that flexibility or not. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. And I'm going to throw this question to Lamide first, but I want Odiria and Ola to weigh in on it as well. You know, so as female leaders, what have you done or will you do to improve work-life balance for the people who work with you?
Okay.
Directly with you, yeah.
Yes, directly with me. So I just want to say a last point on the accommodation.
Yeah, that's good.
Actually, for me in life, I learned at a very late stage, you know, so I hope, you know, this would benefit somebody, that you get what you ask for, not what you deserve. You understand? And it's played against me in a lot of instances throughout my career. But why am I saying this in the context of work-life balance is, if you do need accommodation for time out, ask. Let it be on record that you've asked and they've said no. Don't think that people can read your mind. They know that your child is sick, or you got to go to sports day, or you've got an embassy interview. Just ask and let it be on record that they said no. So you get what you ask for, not what you deserve. So I'll just move on from that. With regards to what have I done or what am I doing for people that work with me to encourage work-life balance? Luckily for me, where I work, flexible working is actually bound by policy. And what that does is that it brings fairness. So whether you're a slacker or a hardworking person, whether you're tall or short, female or male, you know, it's something that's allowed, it's something that you're entitled to because it's bound by policy. And one of the things I try to do for people that work with me is, if I see that beyond the policy, you know, obviously we're all humans, I try and go above and beyond to the extent that it does not create an imbalance within the team, a sense of unfairness, because that is something I desperately always watch out for, unfairness or inequality. So, you know, if you need certain accommodations, your child is sick, you've expended all your parental leave, or you need to go to sports day, or you know you need an extra day or two for study leave, whatever it is. I said, you know what? Let's write it in the black book. Take those 2 days off and just make up the time. And what I found is that, you know, allowing my team, you know, that extra flexibility has made them actually want to go above and beyond, not just for me, but for the organization, because they see it as, you know, an organization that not just takes from them, but actually does give back. And I do really stand by that. But where I do draw the line is when, just moving a little bit to what Ojiri said, is if I see that, you know, you kind of, use that privilege. You know, I had once a female staff that's, you know, whenever we fall out or there's an issue, she comes to me and say, oh, her son is sick. Oh, this is done. I said, okay, no problem. After a while, I just said, you know what, sweetheart? Okay, he's sick again. Okay, just take it off as annual leave. We did that for, 1 or 2 weeks. I tell you, that was the last time that son was sick. Because, people always try to push boundaries. But, for me, it's about fairness. And this is a true story. 2 weeks ago, my driver came with his 4th child. He said he's had a baby. I said, oh, good. Take paternity leave. I did give him paternity leave, and I was driving myself to the office. So, for me, being fair, doing fairness and being seen to be fair, and just understanding that sometimes people get tired, people have moods, people have personal issues, and just, taking that extra emotional intelligence to the next level is how I ensure that there's work-life balance within my team, because a happy team is a happy Lamide. I can't do it on my own. So that's the way I see it. Thank you.
Great. Ola, do you want to weigh in here?
Yeah.
What are you doing for your team?
So within my team, I remember Ojiri was talking about how work-life balance and the fact that emails will be going out or meetings will be running at 10 p.m. because everybody's working from home. Currently in my organization, we are still for 70% of the time working from home. So what I did, especially when it was getting that bad, was that there's a final report you have to send at the end of the day. And I said I must get that report by 5:30. So whatever you people are doing, all your work, like you must push yourself to deliver by 5:30. And I told them, you can't continue like this. You will burn out. And burnout doesn't favor me, right? Even though, yes, you're working for me, but that burnout doesn't favor me. And then if you guys all burn out at the same time, like productivity will dip, and it won't be because you are working from home. It's because you didn't manage your time well. So that's one. Another thing that we do within my team is that we have this book review thing that we do where we find an insightful book. And then what I have realized is that there are things you talk about that, okay, guys, this doesn't work like this. This is how this should be. But after a while, I realized that these people are self-sabotaging, and they're intelligent people. So if you keep doing something that is wrong, it means you don't get it. I might think I'm saying it, but I'm not communicating. So I started this book review. The first one we did was 7 Habits. And I saw the impact, and people just started being personal leaders. People just started improving on their work without you talking. And it created an avenue where you could get feedback. People say, Aula, this is you. This is what you do. And, and it just like brought down the sense of fear and barrier. And literally everybody in my team knows that if you need a day off, right, just tell me ahead of time, right? If you just make it logical. And if it's something that can't work based on the realities on ground, I'll tell you, you can't do it right now. Let's do it at this time. Or let's find a middle ground. Please log in on your computer. You need to show up here. I can't defend this outside of the team. Blah, blah, blah. But I think the major thing is that line of communication. The fact that when someone in your team has an issue, they know they can speak up. It is important to build that level of confidence in your team because you don't want people to pop. You don't want people to get to that point where they just resign and go and sit down at home. And then they're a good resource and it's something you could have fixed, but that communication wasn't there. So the most important thing for me as a team lead is to make sure that my team knows that they can talk to me when they have an issue.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much for that, Ola. Thanks everyone. I want to move a bit to the life side of work-life balance. And I know we all have kids. And I know that's our children are precious to us. So I want to ask, how, let me ask Lamde. Lamde, let's talk about this. People talk about the teenage years as, when we have really young kids and maybe they're 5, 6, we think they're so dependent on us and that we are waiting for when they're teenagers so we can just let them go and just cruise, because we feel that they're older and all that. But then the research is showing that those are really the most critical years, especially now, where we are hearing all kinds of things about horrible things, really mental health issues or suicide, so given that, as a leader, how, and talk about how have you approached work-life balance with your kids? Because I know you have teenage kids. Is it different? And what are you doing differently now with that in mind?
Yes, yes, I've got 2 teenage boys, and it's work-life balance is critical at this stage of their lives. Boys are just so different from girls. People think girls are needy. Wait till you deal with boys, teenage boys. Mommy, they did talk to me. The girl said no. It's just a lot, So how do I deal with work-life balance with my teenage boys? First of all, I treat them as individuals because my boys are very different. One is more self-assured than the other. So I play to their strengths. I spend time with them. And it's not, I don't spend out, first someone comes and put it in the chat box, she doesn't spend hours with them. I don't. But what I do make sure is that whatever time I do spend is quality time. So one of the things I always ask is, how are you? Not the okay mom, how are you? And how was your day? So, and I tell them, don't say, okay, we're not allowed to use monosyllables. I've banned that in my house. You need to use sentences when you're responding to me. And that is how I unpack, how their day was, how they're feeling. Social media has caused so much problems for teenagers and for parents alike. We didn't grow up social media. I'm not even a social media person, so I'm having to grow very quickly with my kids. And so in terms of work-life balance, what I try to do is I always, I'm just never, ever, ever too busy to deal with my kids. It's just because if you don't deal with them now, you're going to pick up the pieces later. So if it's 5 minutes, 10 minutes, how are you? How was your day? And I force them to ask me about how I am and how was my day. That way, just to make sure that the relationship it's a conversation as opposed to one way. But the dynamics are different when you've got teenagers. Totally different from when they're 5, 6, or 10 years old. It's when you're dealing with 18-year-olds, and it's different. But work-life balance is critical. And so people should not think it's the hours, it's the quality of the time that you spend with these kids, these teenagers, that really matters, in their teenage years. Thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. Ola and Odiri, do you have anything to add to that in terms of how we prioritize our kids, and how that having children, how does that how do you approach work-life balance with that?
For me, I have a 5-year-old. Okay, I have a 5-year-old, right? And he's just in primary 1, so we just have 15 minutes of schoolwork every day, but then I love what Olamide says, because when it's time to go to bed, so he should sleep by 8, we go in by 7. So whatever I'm doing, I know between 7 and 8, I block out that time. And let's gist, right? And so with that time, what happened today, he would gist me of all the friends that cheated when we were playing musical chairs and blah blah blah. But I think it's sort of like the same thing, but different dynamics, communication and finding what works. Some kids are more of talkers than others. My son does not really talk until you have that, it's just me and you time. Let's gist. Don't you want to gist with me? But what am I saying? It doesn't have to be 1 hour, right? It might just be 15 minutes. You have to profile your child. But then I think the most important thing is for them to know that they are important, because I realize that when you are talking to my son and you are looking at your phone, even if it's work, he starts acting up. He will do something that will make you want to shout, right? And then after a while of observing that, I realized that, okay, this boy is protesting the lack of attention. So I'm looking at you, answer me and be quick. And when I'm done with this, I'm going to do this and please leave me, right? So setting those boundaries and having quality time when you need to. And of course, outsourcing, sometimes go and play outside. Sometimes drop our grandmas. Sometimes, auntie is around, go and play with her. You've not seen her in a while. But those things do help. But I think the major thing is profile what is important. Even in the relationship with your child, what is important in relating with your child? Focus on that thing and outsource the rest. School can teach the child academics if school is good. You can outsource academics and focus on relationship or whatever. But decide on where the battle you want to fight yourself, own it, and outsource the rest.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ola. Odiri.
All right, so I have a bit of a different experience because I have 3 kids, 2 girls, 1 boy. So I think it was Ola that talked about profiling. So what I try to do is to understand their different behavior, and they are completely different. My younger child, she'll be 8 this year, but she's more clingy to mommy. And I notice her behavior. She tries to copy the older one. The one immediately senior to her is a girl. So she's 11 years old. So if I do something for that one or say thank you to that one, and I don't say thank you to her, there's problem. So when I'm commending my first daughter, and sure, after commending that one, I must commend her. Because there's that, I don't know if it's like you're competing or, so when I notice that, what I try to do is, whatever I'm doing for this one, I try as much as possible to also do it with her. My first is a boy, so it's much different. It's much older and much matured also than the girls. But for me, what I've tried to do is to be intentional, particularly with their schoolwork. When it comes to their school, I can fight. I can really, really fight with those teachers. If I see that anything is wrong or anything that, they're trying to do that I'm not comfortable with, or they come home to tell me, oh, this teacher said this, that school should be ready for me. I don't care the work that is in the office. So I'm going to that school the next day. So I try as much as possible to be intentional about their schoolwork. The year of COVID, one of the terms, I had to homeschool my last daughter, because I noticed that, the school, they kept complaining, and she also, it was as if she wasn't connecting with the way they were teaching. And because of homeschooling, I discovered this girl is she's a kinetic learner, whatever name you call it. I had to start researching what kind of learning style does this one have, what kind of learning style does this one, which I realized was different for all three of them. So that experience also really helped me to say, how do I manage them in their academics, in the different stages that they are, and in the different learning style that they have. So for me, I try as much as possible to be intentional about them, understand what is peculiar to them, what is their strength. And when I see that there's a bit of competition, like recently, my 7-year-old daughter started reading Dog Diaries. And those Dog Diaries books were bought for my 11-year-old. But she was reading them, but not when she saw that the younger one was now taking so much interest in Dog Diary, she picked up and it became a competition. No, mommy, this book is my own. Why is she reading it? So when I noticed, I said, okay, don't worry. I will buy you your own Dog Diaries, or buy you something that is, more aligned with you. But I realized that because there's this competition, so I don't have to favor one of them. So most times I just ask, who is mommy's favorite amongst the three of you? Everyone will shout, me, 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 me. I say, at least thank God they know that mom does not have favorites among any of them. So I think for me, it's just be intentional about, working with them, spending quality time. Olamide talked about is not the number of hours, which is really, really true. Because as mothers and as working women, you don't really have those hours. But for me, there are times when I see that this is a learning opportunity, this is a time to teach this child a principle. So maybe they do something wrong. Rather than getting angry with them, I say, oh, this is the right time to teach this child that this thing is not good. So I use that as a learning time or session to teach them this particular behavior is right, this particular behavior is not right. So for me, that just enhances the bonding opportunity. Thank you.
Fantastic. So I'm going to go right now. Thank you, everyone. I'm going to go right now. I'm going to take some of the questions that the audience have put in. And then I have one last question that I want to ask everyone else. And the first question, one of the questions, someone has asked that the issue is not so much work itself, that it's the life aspect. Some people struggle with the life aspect with regards balancing it with the work, with actual work. So when there's chaos in the life aspect, they tend to prioritize work over life. What advice do we have for someone like that? Who wants to take a shot at that?
So I'll start with saying, you need to fix it, you need to face it. You might need to get help, but try making sure that the help you have is the right kind of help you need for your situation. Why do I say that? Because we've seen people who have done well in their career, but by the time they retire, they are like confused. They have no essence to life apart from work. And it just becomes like a rabbit hole that nobody can get them out of. So if you are still young, I mean, the demography of CFA Society, I want to believe you're still young, right? Even if you're up to 50, right? As much as possible, try and fix it. If it's too touchy for you to fix on your own, get help. Right? Get help from counselors, reach out, ask people. Some people, ask people. There are professionals on social media that you can send a message to and say, this is the situation, right? And the person can say, no, I'm not the kind of person to help you. Try this kind of skill or this kind of experience and all. But it's best to fix it. It might be tough, but it's best to fix it. You can't ignore it because work is not life. That's why you find people that stay in the office till like 11 p.m. Then you have some people, like I had a colleague at work at some point that we would all leave the office at 5:36, and then he would leave the office at 11:30, 12. And then one day I met her at a restaurant, and somehow or the other we connected that, oh, I work in this office. Oh, my husband works in this office too. And she her eyes welled up with tears because she was like, how can you be home at this time? because it was like 5:30 to 6, and then there was no traffic, to be honest, but I was in my area at 6 o'clock. And then I'm like, how are you able to? And I'm like, oh, I had to tell her, no, today is not normal, because I could see that, I knew that he's always the last person to leave the office, and even the security will always complaining because he's the one that keeps them late. And he has a home with a family. Obviously, he's avoiding something. But I had to like pacify her because she literally broke down crying there. The truth is, you need to fix it. Please, if you can. It's not easy, but try get help if you can't do it on your own. But face your reality.
Fantastic. Thank you, Ola. So it's really about we have to fix it. Try and look for some way of fixing it. Someone's going to say something.
Just to add to what Ola said, for women, there are two things that we always prioritize: work and family. We are not in the equation. As a human being, we are not in the equation. But I think it's important for us to begin to set out time for our own self. We set goals for work, we set goals for our family, we set goals for our money, but we don't really set goals for ourselves. How do we take care of ourselves? How do we care for our own self? And then we get to a certain stage where, work is no longer there, kids are grown, families, and then we are lost in the process. So I think it's important for us to begin to prioritize our own self. Find something that you love to do outside of work, that doesn't have to do with work, that doesn't have to do with your family, your kids. Find that thing that you just love to do. One of the things I started doing, I told myself this year, I'm going to just try and prioritize me in the entire scheme of life, is at least once in a month or once in 2 weeks, I just go to a nice restaurant, sit down there and cross my leg, only me, and look at the menu. I can sit down there and just be sipping my drink and eating and be watching a movie on my phone, Netflix, or reading a book. But that 1-2 hours is just me, just decompress, just think of nothing. No care, nobody should come and sit down around me and be just, no, it's just a me time, So I just realized that it's just for me to just take care of my own self, because I realized that in the entire scheme of this hustle and bustling, women tend to prioritize every other thing other than themselves.
Jerry, that's a very good point. And I think it doesn't have to be one thing. It could be anything that they love doing, right? It could be anything. It could be working out. It could be going to the beach. It could just be anything, reading a book. Great, fantastic. I know that, I know we talked about this earlier, but someone's asking that, how do you outsource life when you don't really earn a lot of work? Can we just spend 1 minute? I think, Ola, do you want to talk about that? How do you outsource life when you don't really have you're not earning so much at work? And then we have one last question and then we're done.
So you have to be creative. What do you need to outsource? And who can do it for you in the cheapest way possible, most affordable way possible? If it's childcare, can you exchange children with your neighbor? By exchange children, today I drop them over at yours and you deal with the madness, and then, so you have breathing time. If it's cleaning, what can you do? Can you find maybe someone that cleans the streets already, so you top up her pay, you're not paying for transport, and you just add something little to it and she helps you clean your house? You have to be creative, depending on what you think you need to outsource, and you need to figure out what you need to outsource and what you need to hold tight to you. I think that's the first thing. And when you figure out the things you need to outsource based on your use of time, right, then you now start finding creative ways specific to your situation to outsource them.
Okay, great. I want to ask every one of us, I'll start with you, Lamide, but it's the same question. Do we have to be 100% at work? I don't want to, I'm not advocating for people not being top-notch at work, but the truth is, do we have to be 100% at work or at home? I think that's one thing that gets to women, so you get home and, even with the issue of outsourcing, does it have to be 100% clean? I'm just trying, because does it have to be perfect to get to where we want to be successful? Is that, I feel like that's the woman issue. Do we have to be 100% all the time?
The short answer is no. Nobody's perfect, and nothing can be perfect. No situation can be perfect. And whatever it is you're going through, whether your work is high today, family is low tomorrow, this too shall pass.
Yes.
If you always have that at the back of your mind, that this too shall pass, that should very, very quickly lower your blood pressure. Work-life balance is individual. You're not in race, in competition with anybody. If you start with I and I, what I say is that, I always start with the man in the mirror, and that is me. If you start with I and you define your own boundaries, you set your own goals, your own structures, your own values, any stress from work or life, then you should be able to manage them. Nothing is perfect. Nothing will ever be perfect.
Mm-hmm.
Accept your imperfection and just love you. These too shall pass. So
Great.
It doesn't have to be perfect.
Great. Ola, are you 100% all the time? Do we have to be, to get to the top, do we have to be? Because, some people fall by the wayside just because, and they give up because things are not going so well.
Yeah, I do not think it's not even possible to be perfect. At every point in time, there's always something better you could do about everything. Even these conversations we're having that people are learning from, you might think back later and say, oh, I could have said it differently. Oh, I could have used this story. Oh, I could have done this, right? So for me, I think it's a process. Like life is a process, life is a journey. You have to just keep building, just keep moving, right? As against saying, oh, this is a goal, because sometimes you might get to that goal and you'll be wondering, oh, was this it? Right? So cut yourself some slack. If the house is scattered today, you clean it up and you move on to tomorrow, right? It's not that deep, right? High blood pressure is a real problem. It's a real societal problem, right? And you need to avoid it. And then I think part of it is the pressure we put on ourselves in terms of expectations of what, or the standard we think. But if you look at it, like me, my mom had 2 nannies in the house. One was packing up after us. The other one was, they had support. And then I still had an auntie that lived with us that was part of the help in the house, right? If you don't have a structure where there's one person that is sitting down and picking up after everyone and making everywhere perfect, don't stress yourself. Do what you can, but make sure you are growing. So don't get stuck in, oh, I'm not perfect and accept me as I am. No, be committed to becoming a better person every day. Be committed to growing, but don't think there's like one end goal. Like even when you get to that end goal, there's something else.
Fantastic. Odiri, thank you, Ola. Odiri.
All right. So for me, one of the principles that has helped me over the years is to take each day as it comes. So what am I supposed to do each day? That has guided me. So I recall starting out in my career. I remember when I was writing CFA exam. With pregnancy, you go and write the exam, you come back, you read, Today, I'm not facing that. There's a different monkey I'm facing today. So for me, each day, what is the priority today? What is it I'm supposed to do today? And I carry that burden and do it. If I'm thinking of tomorrow in today, that's what is definitely going to put the pressure on me. And when I was growing up, I always wanted to be the one to clean the house perfectly, to eat food that I cook, not food that I bought from outside or somebody else cooked for me. But today, come on, I can't do that, So I have to manage the house as it is. If it's a nanny that is cleaning it and is not cleaned up to my own perfect state, I have to manage it. If not, I can't come and kill myself, like I used to say. If this weekend I cannot cook, I have to order food, I have to, So for me, I take each day as it comes. What am I supposed to do today? Because at the end of the day, if you look back 10 years down, you will realize that all those things are just going to pass. That phase was just going to pass. We get on that stage of life and it's a new battle. It's a new monkey you have to face. It's a new issue that you have to deal with. So focus on dealing with the issue on that day, and don't get pressured by future problems or future issues, that weigh you for that particular day. Thank you.
Odiri, thank you for that. I want to ask you one last question. You talked about work-life integration. Tell us a bit more about that. Just, I mean, make it practical.
Okay, so for me, work-life integration basically says that there's no difference between your work and your life. It's you entirely. So today you are working, you leave home. I can be in the office now, I'm focused on work. Once I get home, I'm focused on home. I'm not thinking about work. Same way I'm in the office, I'm not thinking about work, or I'm thinking about, my kids are in school. No. But if you're saying work-life balance, it means that, there's a circle that continues to run. But work-life integration basically means that this is your life and this is your work. They are all you, one, and integrated into one person. So for each particular time, which is why I still always love the principle of each day you take it as it comes. If now I'm doing this session, I'm present. I'm not thinking of, what should I be making this lunch for my kids? Yes, a time will come I have to think about that. But in this very moment, this is my life and this is my work. So there's no distinction between life and work. It's about you, and it's the different part of you that comes into expression at different points in time. So once you understand that this is just an expression of me now in the office, if I get home, this is an expression of me now at home, it helps you realize that there's no demarcation. At every point in time, just keep expressing yourself.
Fantastic, thank you for that. On that note, I'm going to hand this over. I just want to say thank you, ladies. A lot of things, I've learned a lot today. I think one of the things that stood out to me is that I liked what Ola said about we just make sure we're growing every day. I like the fact that we all agree that we're not 100% at all the time, and it's okay not to be 100%. It's okay not to be fully on top of, not to be 100% really. I like the fact that we should all think as entrepreneurs, and that we have to be structured. Lamde, I love what you said about, you have to have the structures in place, be disciplined and be structured even when you're a younger person, because that's what takes you as you grow up as well. And I like what I've heard in terms of practical tips is prioritize, structure, finances, and being present. So, on that note, I just want to say thank you so much, guys. Thank you for being on this panel and for all your insight. I'm going to pass this on to Fentola now. Fentola is the Vice Chair of the Gender Diversity Committee here at CFA Society Nigeria, and she's going to give our closing remarks. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for your insight.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Olamide, thank you so much. Ola, Odiri, thank you, Bukum, for coming. I would say that everything spoken at this meeting, I got everything. It's like you're talking to me, because one thing I would also mention is that when Audrey said something about combining work and be passionate about what you do, I think for me, enjoying what you do and being able to drop it at some point to take care of yourself is a balance I struggle with a lot of time. I know Rita, I would say most of the time when she reaches out to me, that I'm healed, that's the only time I slow down. And it's a function of how much you enjoy what you do. But I am learning as you go higher up there that it's not going to slow down for you. You are going to determine how to slow it down. And I also want to encourage people like myself, middle management. I believe work-life balance is attainable, regardless of your level. It's about assessing your value. Take breaks, assess your value, assess what you're doing now, assess where you want to be. Because if a certain firm is not working for you, the corporate culture, you can move. And we are at the time that we actually end based on what we can do, your skill sets. What can you do? What's your work ethics like? If you're exceptional, you can get it done. Another thing I think works for me is that let's ask for help. Women, we need to learn to ask for help. There are a lot of things that when we don't have the financial capacity to do, we just need to ask the right people to help us at work, at home, our spouses. Let's learn to start asking for help. Thank you so much to our speakers. And I just want to leave us with this about International Women's Day. Women, we need to learn to keep our hands up. Speaks to myself, keep our hands up in the sense that you're at a meeting, you have a voice. If you don't intentionally keep your hands up to be heard, you're not going to join the table. And if we don't join the table, we cannot get to the greater equality. More women at the table, then we achieve the greater equality. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Ms. Adelshun. Thank you, Rita. You've done a great job. Thank you so much. Thank you, Ola. And thank you, Odiri. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. Happy International Women's Day, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Join Carla Harris at our quarter leadership March 16. Please, our link is on the chat box.
Okay. Okay, great. Thank you, ladies.
Thank you, CFA Nigeria.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. Bye.